you technically need to make a body wash is water, a surfactant, and a preservative. Body washes are made with an anionic surfactant and then a co-surfactant. An amphoteric surfactant actually works best. I have a video all about surfactants that I will link down below that I recommend you watching if you don't know what surfactants are. Also, before watching this video, make sure you watch all the videos in my Formulating for Beginners series so you know exactly what I'm talking about in this video. Otherwise, things might not make sense to you. And I highly recommend watching my face wash video, part 1 and part 2, because face washes and body washes are very similar. So a lot of the information discussed in that video will be very helpful for this video. If you find the right combination of anionic surfactant and amphoteric surfactant, you can actually make a body wash without any added thickener. This will only work with some anionic surfactants and some amphoteric surfactants. For example, AOS 40 and cocoa betaine. I notice it's usually sulfate-containing surfactants that thicken when combined with an amphoteric surfactant like cocoa betaine. And I know a lot of people are trying to make sulfate-free formulations these days, but luckily AOS 40 is sulfate-free. So if you use AOS 40 paired with cocoa betaine, you can actually avoid using a thickener, which will actually bring the cost value down for your product, and it makes manufacturing your product much faster. So let's go ahead and make a body wash like this. Note, the more AOS and cocoa betaine you use in your formula, the thicker your body wash will be. The less you use, the less viscous it will be. And if you want to add fragrance to this body wash, just add in 1% fragrance at the end of the formula and then mix it in. The surfactants are enough to solubilize 1% fragrance in the formula. I'm personally not the biggest fan of fragrance, so I left that out in all of the recipes in this video. So this is really easy to make. Just add in the distilled water, then the glycerin, then the Liquid Dermal Plus or whatever preservative you want to use. Mix those together, add in the AOS 40 and then the cocoa betaine, and just mix everything together, and then you'll notice it'll thicken up. This is also the time when you want to check the pH. You want to make sure the pH is somewhere between 4.5 to 5.5. If you don't know anything about pH or how to adjust pH, then go watch my video all about pH. It is a part of this Formulating for Beginners series, which is another reason why you need to watch all the videos in this series before watching this video. And this is also the time when you would add in your fragrance. Just add in 1% at the end and then just mix it in, but I'm not going to be using fragrance. And I went ahead and poured mine into my bottle. Typically you want to wait till the next day, and it looks pretty opaque the first day, but as you can see the next day it's completely clear. And this is just an up close shot of the viscosity. And I also wanted to show you guys what happens if you add in mica powder. I added in some purple mica powder, and as you can see, after a day it just settles to the bottom. You need some kind of suspending agent when working with mica powder, so that's why you can't use it in this specific formula. You could also use hydrosols or essence water in place of the distilled water to add in some natural fragrance. You can add in extracts, vitamins, anything else really that's water soluble and that works in the formulation, like the pH and everything. But I'm keeping this video simple for beginners, so we're not going to be adding in all those extra things for any of these formulations. Also, if you're confused as to how I came up with this formula, you know, with the percents and everything, then go back and watch the rest of the videos in this series. By the way, I do have a Patreon. Over on Patreon, I make blog posts that go along with my videos. So if you want like all the information in this video, like in blog form, so you can print it out, have it at your fingertips, you can do that over on Patreon. I also post 2 exclusive videos every single month over there. There's lots of content for you guys. I probably have over 50 Patreon exclusive videos that you guys could binge watch if you went and signed up now. So if you sign up, you have access to all the past videos as well. They don't disappear. Another method you could use to thicken your body washes is actually by using salt. But salt, unfortunately, doesn't work with every anionic surfactant. It only works with anionic surfactants that thicken when they come in contact with amphoteric surfactants like cocoa betaine, just like I discussed earlier. And usually, again, these are sulfate-containing surfactants. So the salt thickening method can't really be used by a lot of formulators these days because customers are seeking sulfate-free formulations, and I work with sulfate-free surfactants, so I don't personally have experience with thickening surfactants with salt. I did try it with AOS 40 since I figured it would work since it thickens from cocoa betaine, but I didn't have luck. I did use pink Himalayan salt because I don't have any other salt on hand and it didn't work. So I don't know if it's because of the salt I used or AOS 40 just doesn't thicken from it. I'm not 100% sure, but there is another YouTube channel that has a great video on the salt thickening topic, so I'll link that video down below if you guys want to watch that. Another simple thickener we can use is crothix. Again, crothix only thickens specific anionic surfactants. It does thicken AOS 40 and AOS 40 when it's combined with cocoa betaine, but it won't thicken cocoa betaine on its own. I also tried making a body wash with foaming apple and cocoa betaine and thickening that with crothix, but I didn't really have any viscosity change until about 4% crothix, which I feel like that's a bit much for this formula. So if you see yourself having to add in a lot of crothix to get any viscosity change, then chances are crothix probably isn't the best thickener for that formulation. Again, it seems to be a lot of sulfate-containing surfactants that thicken with crothix. I noticed a trend, if the surfactant has the word sodium in the name, it's most likely will be thickened using crothix. Don't hold me to that. This is just a common theme I've noticed. Because even AOS 40's actual name isn't AOS 40, that's just in short. Here's the entire name, and as you can see, it has sodium in the name. So even though crothix isn't just a thickened all ingredient, I do think it's a really good ingredient to have on hand in your lab because it's so easy to use. So let me show you how to actually use crothix in a body wash. We'll be using AOS 40 and cocoa betaine in this formula again, but I will lower the percentage of the two ingredients so the two don't thicken the formula too much on their own. So again, you just want to do the same thing we did in the last formula. Add in the water, the glycerin, the preservative, mix that together, add in the two surfactants, the AOS 40 and the cocoa betaine. Make sure you adjust the pH before adding in the crothix because crothix is pH sensitive, but we already know how much to add in since the first formula I made is exactly the same minus the crothix. So I knew exactly how much of my pH buffer I needed to add in. And when using crothix, it's easy to use, but you also have to be very patient with it. You want to add in 1% crothix at a time. Mix that in and let it sit for honestly maybe about like 5 minutes, making sure the crothix is fully mixed into the formula before adding in more of it. I've made the common mistake of just adding in 1%, mixing it in, not seeing any viscosity change, and then just adding more, and then I just end up with way too much crothix. So definitely be patient with it. And as you can see, the formula is very opaque here. This is just what happens. Your formula will be clear the next day. So I'm gonna go ahead and add in some mica powder here and just mix that in, and then cover the beaker, and I'm gonna let it sit until tomorrow. And as you can see the next day, it literally looks like a completely different product. It's this nice gel texture. It even thickens up overnight as well. That's what I'm saying. You gotta be patient with it. Just add in a bit at a time. And crothix just really makes this gorgeous gel consistency that I think is perfect for body washes. And just a quick disclaimer, as you can see, it looks like the mica powder is completely suspended throughout the formula. But after a couple of days of letting this body wash sit, the mica powder actually settled to the bottom. So if you're going to be selling something made with crothix with mica powder, your mica powder will end up settling, so I wouldn't recommend it. And then here's a clip of it lathering with a loofah, just to show you guys how much this really does lather. But loofahs do always make products lather more than they would on their own, but this is really the best way I can show you on camera. So say you want to add in some oil in your body wash. Keep in mind oil does suppress lather and foam, and we're not going to be able to use too much oil, but it is possible by using a solubilizer. A solubilizer helps mix a little bit of oil into water. So in order to add oil into our water-containing body wash, then we're going to need the help of a solubilizer. And the best solubilizer, or easiest to use, I guess, would be polysorbate 80. All you need to do is mix in equal parts polysorbate 80 with your oil and then add it into the formula. I'll show you guys how this is done. So again, the process starts out the same. Add the water, the glycerin, and the preservative, then the 2 surfactants, and then mix those 2 together. In here, I'm adjusting the pH as well, since I know exactly how much of my pH buffer I need. Then in a separate beaker, this is when you want to combine your polysorbate 80 and your oil. And we're doing equal parts. And then just mix the oil and solubilizer together. And you want to add in a little bit of your solubilizer and oil into your other beaker slowly while mixing until it's completely incorporated. And then after that, we can add in our crothix, which I did 2% in this formula, so it is thicker than the last one. And then I added in my mica powder. And you don't have to worry about the mica powder settling out of this formulation, since the solubilizer helps keep the mica powder suspended throughout the formula. And as you can see with this one, this doesn't turn clear, it stays a creamy opaque shade, and this is due to the solubilizer. So when you're making body washes with oil using a solubilizer or emulsifier, they will be creamy instead of clear. But this consistency is gorgeous. I absolutely love it. Crothix makes gorgeous body washes, like I said. And here is a clip of it lathering just to show you guys. And yeah. Now, if you want to make a natural body wash, then those past formulas aren't going to work, except for the first one, as long as you change out the preservative, because Liquid Dermal Plus isn't accepted in the natural community. But I'll go ahead and show you guys some natural ways to make your body washes, except for the preservative. The preservative is not natural. And also, natural is definitely just, it's a term that means something different from everybody. There's no legal definition for what makes a cosmetic natural or not. I just go by what's typically accepted by people in the natural community. All right. So the best thickener for a natural body wash, in my opinion, is xanthan gum. Specifically, xanthan gum soft. It's far more superior than any other xanthan gum on the market. In my experience, xanthan gum has thickened every surfactant I've ever used. So whatever surfactant you choose, it will thicken using xanthan gum. In this recipe, I'm going to use foaming apple as my anionic surfactant instead of AOS 40. AOS 40 is accepted in natural formulas, but I want to use foaming apple since foaming apple and cocoa betaine don't thicken when combined. This way we can see exactly how much the xanthan gum thickens the body wash without other ingredients affecting the viscosity. So I'm starting with the thickening phase. This includes some xanthan gum and glycerin. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in the mica powder in this phase as well. And the xanthan gum does serve as a suspending agent, so you don't have to worry about the mica powder settling out of this product. And you always want to combine xanthan gum and glycerin first, since it helps hydrate the xanthan gum and prevents any clumping in your formula. And then in a separate beaker, you want to combine everything else. This includes your distilled water, glycerin, preservative, cocoa betaine, and foaming apple. Mix everything together and then pour everything into the xanthan gum beaker and mix it up until it thickens. And you want to check and adjust the pH because the natural pH was 6.4, which is way too high. You want to make it anywhere between 4.5 to 5.5. And after the next day, this is how the body wash looks. It does look pretty clumpy here, but I notice a lot of times when I make things with xanthan gum, they might seem clumpy at first, but after like 4 days of sitting, it becomes a lot more smooth. But that doesn't really bother me because I think this is gorgeous. I love it. Xanthan gum is so easy to use. Such an easy formula. And here's a clip of it lathering. It's gorgeous. Hope you guys like this formula. Also, I want to mention, if you use a non-ionic surfactant instead of an amphoteric surfactant in that formula, or really any of these formulas, the product will come out more creamy rather than the gel type. And again, if you want to add some oil into this formulation, we're going to need the help of a solubilizer. We could use polysorbate 80 again, but that's not accepted in the natural community. So instead, we're going to have to use a naturally compliant or EcoCert solubilizer like Polysugamulse D9. Instead of using equal parts oil to Polysugamulse D9, you want to use double the amount of Polysugamulse D9 to oil. This may vary depending on your formula and what oil you use, but I find this to work for most formulas. Since we have to use double the amount of solubilizer, I won't be using as much oil this time. So here's my new formula. So again, this one's pretty much the same. Add xanthan gum, your glycerin, and your coloring first. In another beaker, add in your water and preservative. And I actually went ahead and added all that into the xanthan gum first, and then weighed out the two surfactants separate and then poured them in. I just did it this way so there's less foaming in the product. So then we're gonna grab a separate beaker to weigh out our polysucralose D9, which is our solubilizer, and then our oil. And I use sunflower oil in all these recipes, by the way. So just mix the two together. And as you can see, it turns this opaque. That's just what happens when you use solubilizers a lot of the times. And then you just want to add a little bit into your formula, a little bit at a time while mixing until it's fully incorporated. And then again, you want to check the pH, make sure it's between 4.5 and 5.5, cover it and let it sit until the next day. And the next day, it's not as clear as the last recipe with xanthan gum, and that is due to the solubilizer. It does seem to have a lot less clumping as opposed to the first one, which I'm assuming is due to the solubilizer as well. But here is a clip of it lathering. Love this body wash as well, and it's super easy to make if you want some oil in your body wash. So we've been focusing a lot on like gel type body washes. So what about creamy body washes? I'll show you guys my personal favorite method to make creamy body washes. It's definitely not the only method out there. Keep that in mind. There are thousands of different ways to make body washes. There's so many different ingredients you could use. In this video, I'm just sharing like my personal favorite, the things that I find to be the simplest, and using ingredients that I'm familiar with or have access to. But in my opinion, the simplest way to make a creamy body wash is by using SCI as your main anionic surfactants. And I pair it with cocoa betaine. And you want to make sure you have some kind of amphoteric surfactant to use with the SCI. I specifically use SCI powder, and I don't believe this will work with any other type of SCI. The noodles won't work, and then there's so many different types of SCI. They won't work unless it's powder form. But here's my formula. It's super easy to make, so let's go ahead and make it. So I'm gonna start out with the cocoa betaine and glycerin in one beaker. And then you wanna grab a respirator. This is extremely important when working with SCI. This powder is so fine, it gets airborne so easily, and you do not wanna breathe this stuff in. You also wanna be gentle when adding it into your beaker. Try to just not get the powder airborne as much as possible. Then you just want to gently mix everything together, trying to prevent the powder from going everywhere as much as you possibly can. And then set that to the side and grab another beaker, add in your distilled water, and take both of your beakers and place them in a water bath to let them heat up. And I like to do this to help dissolve any of the leftover powder in the SCI that isn't dissolved. It really helps heating up everything just to do that. And this really helps incorporate everything quicker, and you'll know that SCI has dissolved because you'll have this nice creamy consistency going on. So just pour the distilled water into the SCI mixture, and you just want to mix gently, and you're gonna have to come back and mix this periodically as it cools because it will try to separate. But if you just come back and mix it like every 20-30 minutes, you'll be good. But separation will be normal, but just keep mixing it until it cools. And once it's cooled, you can add in the preservative and mix that in, and then just cover it and let it sit until the next day. So here it is the next day. It's this nice creamy texture. I love the just natural color of this body wash, which is why I didn't add any coloring to it. And this one, I think personally lathers up the most out of all these body washes I made. I love the creamy, gorgeous consistency. I think this one is by far my favorite body wash to make out of all these just because it's so easy to make. And here's the lather that this body wash makes. I don't know if you can tell, but I felt like there was more lather in this body wash than any of the other ones. This is really the only one I felt lathered differently compared to any of the other ones. Now, if you want to add some oil into this creamy body wash, you can do that with the help of a waxy emulsifier like emulsifying wax NF or read Emulse SCG if you want your product to be naturally compliant or eco-certs. And by using a waxy emulsifier, we can actually use a higher amount of oil because emulsifiers can mix in a higher amount of oil in with water as opposed to solubilizers. But obviously we can't use a bunch of oil. There is a limit. I wouldn't go over about 10% in this formula specifically because there's no other like co-emulsifier. These surfactants do serve as a little bit of like a solubilizer. That's why we can add in 1% fragrance in the first few formulas that don't contain any kind of solubilizer or emulsifier. But you just don't want to overdo it, okay? Just keep that in mind. I wouldn't do over 10%. So in one beaker, you want to combine the cocoa betaine, the SCI, and the glycerin, again, making sure you have your respirator on when working with SCI. Mix that all together, and then a separate beaker, weigh out your distilled water, then grab a third beaker and add in your emulsifier. I'm using Read Emulse SCG, and your oil, I'm using sunflower oil. Then you want to take all three of your phases, place them in a water bath again, and let them heat until the SCI mixture is nice and smooth. Then start by adding in your oil phase into the SCI mixture and mix. And then pour in your distilled water and then mix that up. And again, this one will try to separate, but just every 20-30 minutes, come back, mix it, make sure it's all mixed together and there's no separation. And you just want to do this until it fully cools. Once it cools, it won't separate. Then I added in some mica powder. And then once it cooled, I added in the Liquid Dermal Plus. And then you just want to let it sit until the next day. And here is the consistency we got. And here I am filling up my bottle just to show you guys what the consistency looks like. And here it is lathering with the loofah. I do feel like the one with SCI without oil did lather more than this one, but it's really hard to tell with loofahs because they just lather up so well. And that's a wrap. That's my introduction of body washes for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave your comments down below and I'll talk to you guys next time. Later.